Good morning, and welcome to the Hokyoji Sunday Dharma talk today. It's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Myo-O Habermas-Scher, who practiced with Katagiri Roshi from 1975 until his death in 1990. She also trained for 12 years in the Vipassana tradition. She received Dharma transmission in 2012 from Dokai at Hokyoji. Myo-O is a master movement teacher and teaches somatically based vocal training. In 2021, she retired after 14 years as an interfaith staff chaplain at the University of Minnesota Medical Center Fairview. She's also a mom and a grandmother of two little grandsons. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Myo-O, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dokai. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. Oh, okay. Well, I thought, oh, it's Mother's Day today. So I should talk about the mother of all Buddhas, Prajna paramita. So then I started studying, and oh my goodness, I got myself in a tangle. So hopefully it'll be somewhat untangled this morning. Let's see. Good morning, everybody. So the studying for this talk took me on a complex walk into Buddhist historical teachings, the lived practice of mothering, and the most important question to me, which is, how is the mother of all Buddhas alive right now, right here in our messy human life? When my daughter Annika was born in July of 1983, I told Katagiri Roshi that I was doing Shikan baby. So he always talked about Shikantaza, just sitting. Shikantaza. I was doing Shikan baby. So as many of you probably know, when the baby arrives, any holy sense of Shikantaza gets shredded. The mother of all Buddhas has opportunities to be exhausted, sleep deprived, physically disheveled, unorganized, deeply vulnerable, and in no theoretical way, a heart ripped open. The self we've been studying shows itself as a fabric that is fully alive, out of control, confused, and redolent with every mental and emotional formation on the list, usually several at once. Humility is required to learn from this great teacher who gives no quarter, who won't explain the lesson to be learned, and who offers a different answer to every question. Not only is the baby dependent, the baby's mother is dependent on everyone and everything in her nexus of existence. So, we like things to be orderly in the Zendo, and we treat every object like Buddha, and everything is clean. When motherhood arrives, none of that is actually possible. When Annika had her first baby in 2018, I watched as she carefully wrote down the times of each feeding, trying to get a handle on a schedule. I said nothing. Mom, the schedule keeps changing. Just when we think we know what's happening, it changes. I said, I know, honey. I didn't tell her not to bother writing down all those things. It gave her some sense of control. So as mothers, some of us are mothers, I think. What can we make of the story of the Buddha leaving his family in the middle of the night? Anne Cushman, who's a Vipassana teacher, asked Fu Schroeder, a priest at Green Gulch, who was actually very wonderful to me when I was there in 2003. She said to that question, well, he wasn't the Buddha when he left his child. He was a young prince in terrible pain. She answered, if you're awake, you don't leave your child. Where would you go? Meaning, like, we don't leave what's happening. Was it Hakuin who somebody gave a baby to? Is that right? Yeah. Well, he didn't leave the baby, even though he wasn't the father. He was being blamed. He probably didn't know that much about taking care of a baby either, but he just took care of it because it was in front of him to do. If you're awake, you don't leave your child, you don't leave your tomato plant, you don't leave the dishes, you don't leave your friend. Where would you go? Fu became a mother late in, I think in her 40s. I'm not sure, might have been even older, because she was asked to adopt a child whose parents could not take care of her and who was chronically ill. So she was asked, how did becoming a mother affect her practice? And she said she was really so worried about this child all the time, and she was a maniac, kind of. And this is what she said. She said, I became a human being. That's what Buddhist practice is all about, becoming human. I love that poem by Ryokan with the line, oh, that my priest robe were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in this floating world. I love that. And Ryokan, you remember, played with children all the time, a lot. And the children were not theoretical responders to an unfolding Buddhist teaching. They were the Dharmakaya itself, responding to the Dharmakaya that Ryokan also was. No wonder they played all day. How delicious. So we have Prajna Paramita Devi, a female deity, the personification of perfect wisdom known as the Great Mother. And of course, gosh, the Great Mother just shows up everywhere in every tradition. I wonder if I should go get this photograph. I have a friend who's an artist. She does these complex installations. And at one point, when Annika was a little girl, she asked us to be the models for what she was doing. And she played Peter Gabriel's music from The Last Temptation of Christ while someone wrapped me up in layers and layers and layers and layers of material so that I became the 3,000-year-old woman, the goddess. And my daughter, she told my daughter that she was Shira of Babylonia. She was supposed to walk across, just walk across the room towards me. She wrapped up my arm, so I was like pointing. So I became the great mother for that experience. And I'll just say as an aside, is when we got the proofs back, I asked Annika if she'd like to see the pictures that Dorit took of us, and she said, "No, I'm just a regular kid now." Yeah. And I was just a regular mom also. So this great mother is not separate from impermanence, and often, like Kisa Gotami, realizes not only birth, but also the death of her child. Recently, I had the opportunity to work with a student at Tassajara on Zoom. She had been very close friends with the lovely Caroline Meister, a student at Tassajara who very recently went out walking one day and fell down a waterfall and died. Yeah. She shared with me that Caroline's parents had another son whom they had lost to illness. And then they had a second son who was mentally ill and they had no idea where he was. How does the mother of all Buddhas care for Caroline's mother? Sometimes I go to is it the cathedral? Oh, I think it's called another name. But anyway, St. Mary's Cathedral in Minneapolis. And in that cathedral, at the very top, I mean, it's just huge and amazing. At the very top is the Great Mother, Mother Mary, kind of floating above everyone. It's just amazing. Sometimes I just watch her the whole time I'm there. The Buddha taught Kisa Gotami by giving her a task of bringing him a mustard seed from a household which had not seen loss and grief. Of course, Kisa was unable to bring him that mustard seed. In her realizing that impermanence is the law of this realm and that she was not alone with this truth, she returned to some semblance of stability, and she was born into the Dharmakaya body of the Buddha. I have this book that recently became controversial. It's a book of poems. People got upset because a guy wrote them. I don't know. I like the poems anyway, so forgive me if it's called The First Free Women, Original Poems Inspired by the Early Buddhist Nuns. So here's a poem by Upiri. It's called Upiri, the Earth. How many days and nights did I wander the woods calling your name? Jiva, my daughter, Jiva, my heart. Late one night, finally exhausted, I fell to the ground. Oh, my heart, I heard a voice say, 84,000 daughters, all named Jiva, have died and have been buried here in this boundless cemetery you call a world. For which of these Jivas are you mourning? Lying there on the ground, I shared my grief with those 84,000 mothers, and they shared their grief with me. Somehow, I found myself healed not of grief, but of the immeasurable loneliness that attends grief. My sisters, Those of you who have known the deepest loss, as you cry out in the wilderness, just make sure you stop every so often to listen for a voice calling back. Thich Nhat Hanh, my favorite book, as you can see. You know this book, The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's very well loved in this household. He writes that the perfection of understanding, Prajna paramita, is often represented in Buddhist iconography as the mother of all Buddhas. He says that the birth of the Dharmakaya, the body of the teaching, the body of the way, is born of practicing the Dharma, the way to realizing love and understanding. Dharmakaya is the embodiment of the Dharma, and he offers us this gata, opening the window. Opening the window. My window is open right here. I look out onto the Dharmakaya. How wondrous is this life! Attentive to each moment, my mind is clear, like a calm river. I went to Green Gulch, and Joan Snyder O'Neill also went to Green Gulch, and they were studying the Samnirmochana Sutra. Oh my goodness me. And we came they'd already been studying it, so we had missed the introduction weeks. And so we were popped into this highly, highly technical kind of combo Chinese, Tibetan translated document up from the Yogacara school. And Joan and I could not understand what Reb Tenshin Anderson was saying. We were just lost. It was so technical. So we just looked out. We confessed to each other later. We just looked out the window into the Dharmakaya of the trees. And that's how we got through all those classes. So Thich Nhat Hanh says the Dharmakaya became the equivalent to suchness and the Tathagata Garbha, the womb of the Tathagata, the thus come, thus gone one. Thich Nhat Hanh encourages us to give birth to our own Dharma body. He says that this is what the Buddha told his followers the day before he died. Be a lamp unto yourself. It's kind of interesting to me that pure emptiness is represented as a feminine figure, as the great mother perfecting wisdom. It's written as perfect wisdom, but that doesn't feel real to me. Perfecting wisdom. Yeah, that ing, like it's never not happening. A mother without kleshas, you know what kleshas are, that blah when we get triggered. A mother without kleshas is available to compassion, to being the embodiment of compassion, holding Kisagatami while wisdom floods her being, and she matures past despair and hopelessness. This is how it is in the world. Somehow becomes the comfort of the goddess. I can relate to Kisogatami personally, but I didn't have the Buddha to turn to when my first baby, a boy, died the day after he was born. Katagiri Roshi came to our home, sat in my bed, and said, 6 hours of life. When my grandfather called and began trying to figure out who to blame, my eyes started going around in circles, and my husband, bless him, shouted to me, "Blame is the devil, put it on the altar." in each moment that wisdom arose, Prajna paramita also arose in that moment and offered the wisdom of how it was just at that moment, based in unutterable compassion and wisdom. So as I was studying, like drifting up from the depths, I went, oh, Tathagata Garbha, wait, Alaya Vijnana. Oh, how do these things go together? So the Alaya Vijnana is the storehouse consciousness that okay, I'm just going to say, like cooked up in the Yogacara, but it's connected to the womb of emptiness, the womb of all Buddhas. So we hear about the Tathagata Garbha, the eternal immutable matrix of all reality, the womb of absolute essence of Buddhahood. That means we are innately capable of awakening. There's nothing else happening. It points to the boundless, nurturing, sustaining, and deathless essence of Buddha nature. This nature is present with the body, and we are fortunate, many people are fortunate in different ways. This is our way to find a way to discover its unfolding. The Buddhist teachings are instructions that both describe the path, but also are the manifestation of the path within us. So the Tathagata Garbha is equated with the Alaya Vijnana, the storehouse consciousness. So this is where it got technical, and I could understand what was happening, but how am I going to explain this? That's what I was up till midnight, like, how am I going to explain this? So I'm going to try to explain this. So the Tathagata Garbha is the womb of suchness, we could say. And the Alaya Vijnana is storehouse consciousness, is every possible formation that we don't know where it comes from, that arises in our body and mind. When certain conditions are present, certain things arise in our mind or heart, and it's sometimes it's a big surprise. Have you noticed that? That when you're just doing your life or you're sitting zazen and seemingly out of nowhere, something unfolds itself and gives us opportunity to be the great mother and hold it and know it. It wants to be known, so it can reveal itself. So these two things are connected. Storehouse consciousness was a way to explain the arising of endless unconscious formations. Because in the unfolding of the Buddha Dharma, in the Abhidharma, which is Buddhist psychology, the important thing was to notice the impermanence or not self of anything that was arising. But then what is all this arising? How do you explain all the arising forever and ever? So then they began to understand more, and they said, well, there's a storehouse consciousness. And our training is to water the bija, the wholesome seeds that arise, and don't water the unwholesome seeds. So I just planted a tree in my backyard. It was supposed to rain the day after I planted it. My old tree, my Russian olive, finally, I had to give up that it was really needed to come down. So I planted a river birch, and I've been watering it every day because it didn't rain like it was supposed to. So I'm watering the wholesome seed. And one of the people I've been studying with recently is constantly talking about choice, that we have a very modest choice we can make in the moment. It's not, we can't control things, but we can make a modest choice. And it kind of reminds me how it hit me. It kind of reminds me of going to dance class every day for years and years and years and years and years, every morning. And then realizing what a plie is. Do you know what a plie is when you bend your knees? It means to bend in French. It's just this. That's all it is. But after a trillion plies, I suddenly realized, oh, a plie. It's like the whole gravity moving through the whole. Oh my goodness, a plie. It's huge. So one day it dawned on me, wait, what? Choice? So when the bija come up, I can actually say, no, I'm not going to water that seed. So I'm making a choice to stay in alignment with my vows. I don't know if I can explain how it feels. It's a felt sense. It's not an intellectual like, oh, that's wrong, I won't do that. You know, where that's very separate from us. I can actually feel the quality of the seed, and that it's not furthering, and that it's draining. And that I actually could make a choice in that moment. Like, well, what I say to myself is, no, sweetheart, don't go there. That's what I say. So I hope that makes sense, but we can talk about that later. So we deal with these things that come up from the unconscious on the cushion, but also all day long. More recently, Alaya Vijnana has been compared with theories of unconscious mental processes in depth psychology and cognitive science. So that's kind of cool. And the Alaya Vijnana was a development of the Yogacara school, which I find the Yogacara school so fascinating. Okay, so now we're going back. When I saw this last night, I started laughing. Samdhinir Mochana Sutra, the one I could not understand what they were talking about. So here's a quote from the Buddha. The appropriating consciousness is deep and subtle, all its seeds flowing like a river. Because it might incorrectly be conceived as a self, I have not taught it to the ignorant. So, do you understand? Yeah. All the seeds flowing like a river. So all these bija, all these impulses, all the aggregates are flowing like a river, but it's not a separate self either. So it's subtle. So the Buddha didn't want to teach it because then people would make it into a thing. So this particular passage elucidates that the Alaya Vijnana, which is considered to be synonymous with Tathagata Garbha Buddha nature, is not a self. Further, it very explicitly states that the teaching on Alaya Vijnana were purposefully withheld out of concern that it might resemble an immutable essence and would be confused for and associated with selfhood. The Alaya Vijnana is the womb of Maya formations, The Tathagata Garbha is the womb of suchness. And I don't want to really go back to Nagarjuna and start talking about the Tetralemma and all this mental stuff, but I'll just mention. So for both of these womb natures, the concept of a deeper luminous layer of consciousness was called upon to provide a more refined, a more complete ground for emptiness. As Nagarjuna's, I'm just reading this, equation of emptiness with dependent origination anyway, that's just it's just too detailed. But anyway, Nagarjuna just like analyzed the arising of a moment and where can you find it and where is it? And the mother, the great mother, is holding all of it. And Nagarjuna was very influential in creating Prajna paramita, emptiness. So I'm curious about the felt sense of the mother of all Buddhas being known to us. How do we realize such an essence that is not a thing, that so much scholarship has been offered about? The wombs of unconscious formations and suchness working together as the body of the Buddha, our body, are not separate from this awakening. Zazen, the mystical alchemical vessel that, aligned with our vows and/or our aspirations, is our little boat on the sea of samsara. Shikantaza, Shikan baby, Shikan awakening, Shikan mother of all Buddhas. That's all I have to say this morning. Thank you for listening, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Please. Kim, are you saying something, Kim? No. Okay. Well, I'll ask you a question then. Did that make any sense?
Thank you, Myo-O. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the felt sense of the seeds arising and whether just in your personal practice and what that means to you, how those might come up and maybe a little bit about the choice or the decision making around that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, actually I can, because recently something happened and I got pretty activated. And, I've had a lot of opportunities in my life to get activated. So this is the most recent one. And let's see. So one thing is, sometime when we have the opportunity to look at an activation, let's just say, our habit is so deep to turn away. Like when the thing is really subtle, we just like we don't quite feel it, and we already like just, it's not a conscious decision, but we don't let ourselves notice that it's like, oh, that's not it. So to say, wait, stop, to myself, like, what, just a second here. And then to allow, usually it's unpleasant. And it's a combination, often it's sensations in the body. And it might be, we hear something in our mind. Something like that. And then to just like hold it, like the mother of all Buddhas. This is the womb of the Buddha. This is birth. Let it, it's not easy. Giving birth is not easy. It kind of takes everything you got. So let it be known. And then, watch it, its nature release. Don't take birth. And if you notice, oh, this is not wholesome, what's happening, but it's happening. Okay, so that's two things. It's happening, so turn towards it, know what's happening, but don't take birth in it. Don't make an identity. I am the one who blah, 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 or angry or whatever. And it's just wild, that choice to not take birth in it, but allow. So, for instance, when you have a baby, let's say you have a toddler, well, 1 minute they're laughing, the next minute they're heartbreakingly screaming. It's hard to know what's going on. But as the womb, as the great mother, so to say, I don't take birth in their distress. I see what's happening. I understand to some extent. Maybe not the why, but I understand, oh, this is happening. And I can allow this. But I don't have to get tangled up in it. So I'll give you an example for that. In March, I visited my grandsons and my daughters, and the little one, he's 2.5, did not get a good nap at school, at his little school. So he was a wreck. Like when we don't get a good nap, we're a wreck, but usually we can manage ourselves. But when you're 2.5, you can't. So he was screaming. Nothing my daughter did was helping. She tried a bottle, she tried this, she tried that, she tried this, she tried that. And so the older one, who's 6, was watching his brother scream all through dinner, watching his mother frantically trying to help. And so then it was time to help the older one get ready for bed. So I was helping him. And all of a sudden, he was lying in his bed and we were changing into his jammies. And he just started kicking his legs and yelling at me like that bija, whatever, just he couldn't take it anymore, just exploded. And to my own surprise, I just went, Jasper, because we have a beautiful relationship, I just said, honey, did you just yell at me? Like, what? why did you yell at me? I mean, I was very like this, but in a very natural way. I wasn't like doing a technique or something. And he said, I don't know. He didn't know. So that was a moment of conditions were such that let's just say in this framework, some bija got triggered. It couldn't pass by. But it was held. I didn't go, don't you yell at your grandmother. I didn't do that. That didn't happen. I mean, that's just not what happened. I love him to death. So I was just like, wait, did you just yell at me? What's going on? What's the matter? I don't know. So then the charge just, and I don't like take a big credit, like I'm so skillful. It just kind of happened that way. But does that help you?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I wonder because I don't know, a lot of fear comes up in those situations, and it is a fear of getting hurt, and also like getting hurt doesn't hurt that bad, but the fear, it's fear of fear, you know. So I wonder what kind of I don't know what kind of practices have helped you to show up in that way, if you could share some of those.
Oh, what's really helped me is, first of all, my own 50 years of experience with my own activations, right? Like, oh, and also like as recently going, oh my gosh, really? That's there? Oh, I'm not going to take birth in that, which is different than saying, I'm pushing that away under the carpet. We're not going there. I'm not going to feel this. That's not what I'm doing. I'm going, holy mackerel, really? Well, I don't want to live in this formation. So it's known. I let it be known, because if I don't let it be known, it's going to bite me in the butt another time. So I let it be known. I don't try to control it, but I also say, oh yeah, no, thank you. I'm not going to water the seed. Like, that's so and so. I don't know. Like, no, 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 no. We're not. And actually, I can say that maybe I'm just old and tired, but that doesn't even give me enjoyment anymore. You know what I mean? We get mad at someone and they're so terrible and we're so right and la 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 la. I don't think it's not pleasurable. So I'd really rather, and I feel it in my body. So this is not like, oh God, blah, blah, blah. I'll be Dharma. No, alive vijnana. No, I'm not talking to myself. It's it's a dance in the body and with vow, like, and with alignment. I'm aligned with my vows. I don't want to be aligned with my reactivity. I'm really clear about that. That doesn't mean I don't have any reactivity. I just don't want to be aligned with it. And it's a it's a dance. It's like this. Whoop, no, no. And realizing that I have choice and practicing, it's like when you practice your voice or you practice your musical instruments, Dozan, and then you're in the situation, you're playing with other people, someone makes a goof, you don't think, oh no, they made a goof. You think, oh, what do they say? Rerouting the lady in the GPS, rerouting, you turn down another street and she goes, rerouting. So like you reroute and you go with it. You go with it, but you don't take birth in the mistake. Does that help?
Oh yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I
Okay.
appreciate that. Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, thank you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Dan.
So this is an area that I've really been looking at. So it's interesting that you bring this up from a slightly different perspective. So since Kikon translated all the karma talks from Katagiri Roshi, and we gave that class at Compassion Ocean, and then we talked about it also at practice period. This is exactly what Katagiri was talking about. Is like we don't have a lot of control over what pops up. You can think that you're in control, but you don't have any control over what pops up. But you do have this pivot point that you can decide, as you're talking about. You can decide which way to go from that. So and Brad Warner was at practice period, and I've been listening to Brad's talks online on YouTube, and he has quite a contingent of people who come in and ask, send him questions. So someone asked him this question about this book that some woman had written about her enlightenment experience and what it was like. So he talked a little bit about his so-called awakening experience. And the thing that I found most interesting was he said for 2 or 3 months afterwards, he just went through and just lived his life without a lot of dithering, without a lot of decision making, without a lot of, is this right? Is that right? He just went and just did things. And it seemed just like it was much easier and much simpler and much more just a sense of ease. And he's not saying that what he did from an objective point of view would be he always made the correct decision, but he felt that this was his karma manifesting in a way that it almost had to manifest for him to go through it. So I'm working with that sense of things these days, of seeing, just allowing things to manifest and being on that decision point about, well, what do you think of that? Is that the way you want to go? Because I'm still in the state of dithering. I'm still in the state of, is that right? Is that wrong? Is this a better thing? Is that a worse thing? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? But things are manifesting. Things are manifesting.
Thank you, Ryushin, for sharing. Yoku-sama.
Well, what's coming up for me are two things. One, the soil. The soil is, for me, it's the karma. Stuff comes up or it doesn't come up. And that's very helpful for me when I'm grounding myself. And usually I access it in some way that relates to Thich Nhat Hanh's I See You. So he has a very short article that I keep and frequently reference, which is the practice of not running away. So that's what I can access usually. So that simple phrase, I see you. And then he has two other ones after that. I am here for you. I will take care of you.
Yeah.
And to me, it goes so well with just the whole experience of soil, garden. Stuff comes up, and that choice to really stop whatever's going on by just saying that phrase out loud, I see you, is amazingly transformative, and quite hard to do, because the natural habit is there's a quick noticing, and then there's a kind of a pulling away that involves some amount of getting involved in thought. So I appreciate moving into the body. And I know you've had a lot of experience with that, but I think it's easy for me to get immediately caught in a whole train of thought that goes all over the place. So that stopping, which seems like I don't have time for this, I'm in the process of blink, 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 is the main reason, I guess, that my strongest intention is not unlike what you were saying, Ryushin, to cultivate continuous mindfulness. No conclusions, very hard, no conclusions. See stories, see how that works. That's really the first noble truth. Really penetrate the truth of exactly how this works. And that's what helps me the most. I was kind of tracking with you in the beginning of your talk, and then my mind just doesn't adapt very well to Buddha's names for things, or who's ever, I lose track of what that means, really. But that just tie to the ground, in a way, is very helpful, and it does a great job for me, anyway, of not getting too wound up in karma and not forgetting the just the ancientness of the soil. Lots of things have happened. I don't know what they are, but they didn't disappear as soon as they happened. They affected what came next. So that helps me when I'm confused, anyway. It helps me when I want to run away. It's like, I don't want to pull weeds. It's too hot. All those kinds of things. So that's all. Thank you for giving us a talk about giving birth, and taking care. I'll look forward to somebody giving a talk on Father's Day, because they kind of get left out. It's like the male elephant. They wander around and they go off in the woods. And meanwhile, the lady elephants are, always together, always in communication. So it's a different kind of energy.
Thank you, Kyoku, for your teaching. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kyoku. This is Dokai. We're getting close to the end here, but I just wanted to say something that popped through my mind, or went through my mind, was we're in an incredible period of birth here at Hokyoji. The whole northern hemisphere is, and spring. But we really notice it here at Hokyoji, just the vegetation exploding. And it's, for some reason this year, maybe I spent a little more time here at Hokyoji than usual, but I'm just really moved by the plants and the birds, and not yet the insects, but the birds, but just and all the life. And at the same time, when I was walking around yesterday looking at things, there's also the weeds. The weeds are coming back, and it's like it's just an enormous amount of work to deal with the weeds. And I looked what weed up, the meaning of the word weed once, and just an unwanted plant in an unwanted place at an unwanted time. So it's not, it's no particular plant. It's just some kind of plant that's in the wrong place at the wrong time, according to our human perspective. So anyway, it's kind of a little different definition of a word of a weed that I can appreciate. So I think we've come to the end here, and thank you again for your talk. And next week's talk is going to be given by me, and then the events that are happening in the month of May and early June are the True Hearts Women's Retreat, begins on the May 16th, and led by the associate teachers Kyoku and GD Laura Kennedy. On May 26th, the Just Sitting retreat begins. Those are both Hokyoji retreats. On June 9th, there's a Mahakala retreat, and I think it's somewhat of a Tibetan retreat. I don't know much about it. I'm not sure how one would register for that. And then on June 19th, there's a Practicing the Way retreat with, again, with GD Laura Kennedy. With that in mind, let us recite the 4 vows and close today. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thank you again. Bye-bye, everyone.